He was lucky because one of his teacher, Karol Berger, noticed his talent, and he tried to support and develop his talent and his interest into drawing and mathematics.
Raised in a small Slovakian town, he immigrated to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania in 1896. And it was his new home, Wilkes-Barre, that his inventor inner genius was unleashed.
This is a man who was one of the greatest Slovak scientists. He had the nucleus of social networking as well as of radio.
People congregated to see the most advanced wireless telegraph in the world, and it was happening in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. About 45 to 50 words per minute could be sent using this technology. This demonstration was so important because it firmly established Father Murgas's claim to the development of the first practical land radio.
As I learned on a recent study abroad program in Slovakia, Father Murgas was a Slovak Catholic priest who not only brought together the Pennsylvania Slovak community, but changed the world as we know it. Along with his work as a priest, he was also an influential scientist, artist, and one of the loudest voices for the creation of an independent Slovak and later Czechoslovak state.
In the summer of 2016, 10 King's College students and 2 King's College faculty members embarked on a journey to discover the world of the Central Eastern Slavic peoples, beginning in Poland, making their way through Slovakia, and ending in the Czech Republic. One of the central goals of this group was to investigate, share, and celebrate the life of a Slovakian priest, artist, biologist, and scientist, Father Jozef Murgas. Father Murgas is important to the Wilkes-Barre and King's communities, having spent the greater share of his adult years in this area, dedicating himself to the religious life of the Slovaks and the Sacred Heart Church, but also bringing a sense of pride and discovery to the local community. This group of King's students and faculty, after reading extensively about the life and discoveries of Father Murgas before the program, traveled in May and June 2016 to Slovakia, where they visited his birthplace in Tahov and his high school in Banská Bystrica, and toured the bishop's palace where his paintings still hang, also in Banská Bystrica. In addition to learning more about Murgas's life, the group brought along artifacts and documents from the Wilkes-Barre community to offer as a gift and aid to those Slovaks who dedicated their lives to keeping Murgas's memory alive in Slovakia. After returning from this program, the King's students worked in pairs to showcase their newfound understanding of the life of Father Murgas by writing essays for the radio. The essays focus on different aspects of Father Murgas's life. Over the next hours, these essays will be shared with audiences throughout the community in a manner befitting Father Murgas on the radio. Enjoy learning about and celebrating the life of a true Renaissance man, Father Jozef Murgas. King's students met with Dr. Sonia Svetsuva, curator of the Literature and Music Museum of Banská Bystrica, who discussed the importance of Father Murgas in the realms of biology, radio, and the arts.
Jozef Murgas bol už ako dieťa veľmi nadaný. Chodil do ľudovej školy tu v Tajove, bola tam v tých priestoroch, ako je teraz obchod a divadlo.
So Jozef Murgas was very, very talented as a child. He attended the local elementary school, which was located in 2 days grocery store, which is near the theater. It's not like big theater, it's small theater, okay?
Spomedzi ostatných detí vynikal, zaujímal sa o techniku, ale už aj o malovanie, o kreslenie od malička.
So he as a child showed his interest in drawings, and also he was into techniques.
Mal šťastie, lebo mal veľmi dobrého učiteľa Karol Berger, ktorý tieto jeho talenty podporoval.
He was lucky because one of his teacher, Karol Berger, noticed his talent, and he tried to support and develop his talent and his interest into drawing and mathematics.
Father Murgas, radio inventor, Bryn Connor and Caroline Jones.
A few months ago, I returned from the trip of a lifetime to Central Eastern Europe, and I mean this without any exaggeration because it truly was an unforgettable trip. As a school group of 12, we traveled to Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic during the course of 3 adventurous tour-filled weeks. Having never been to Europe, simply stepping off the plane was an entirely new experience. After spending 5 days in Krakow, Poland, we took a bumpy bus ride to Bratislava, Slovakia. After a few days in Bratislava, we traveled northeast to the small village of Tahov and the beautiful and quaint town of Banská Bystrica. The region had so much to offer, but this is probably best known as the birthplace of the priest, artist, nationalist, scientist, and inventor extraordinaire, Father Jozef Murgas. For those who live in northeast Pennsylvania, they may have heard the name Murgas before, though the jack-of-all-trades priest was born on February 17, 1864, raised in a small Slovakian town, and educated in various schools and universities throughout Central Europe. He immigrated to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania in 1896. And it was his new home, Wilkes-Barre, that his inventor inner genius was unleashed.
My grandparents and great-aunt grew up in North Main Street in Wilkes-Barre, and my great-aunt still lives on that road. My grandmother was the youngest of 14 children, and although Father Murgas died before she was born, she remembers hearing stories of him from our older siblings and the generations who came before her. For decades, my family attended the Masses at Sacred Heart Slovak Church, which was the church of Father Murgas. When I told my grandmother and great-aunt that I would be studying abroad and learning about Father Murgas, they were thrilled because he was such a memorable legend in their community. As I was visiting Slovakia and experiencing Tahoe, the hometown of Father Murgas, I felt a personal connection to him through the past generation of my family.
At a young age, Murgas displayed an interest in electricity, possibly due to Heinrich Hertz's early work with radio wave detection. He aimed to continue learning and experimenting specifically with wireless telegraphy in America. So, 2 years after he relocated to America, Murgas set up a research laboratory in the rectory basement. The name perhaps most closely associated with the radio is Guglielmo Marconi. Marconi began experimentation in Italy around the same time as Murgas. The Italian scientist used Hertz's discovery of radio waves to invent one of the first radio communication systems in 1894. However, the waves only transmitted a signal a short distance and only over a body of water. At this time, Murgas was still living in Slovakia, and the general public believed wireless telegraphy to be completely useless over land. When, 4 years later, Murgas began his research in America, he used the ideas of Hertz and Marconi to form hypotheses about signal transmission. Murgas's curiosity and intelligence allowed him to create his first successful invention, the Murgas system.
In 1896, Murgas commented that the field of electrical wonders had just opened, and it is difficult to predict the great things it has in store for us. Little did he know at that point that he would be making history by inventing the radio and affecting billions of people. Father Murgas became interested in wireless land communication, and he was determined to succeed at inventing this type of transmission, even though other scientists had been unsuccessful. In 1902, there was a train wreck in Wilkes-Barre that impressed him with the possibility of preventing train accidents in the future if messages could somehow be transmitted to moving trains. After rigorous work and experiments, Murgas discovered a new form of transmission. This discovery was a rotary spark gap, which is a tool that can make groups of sparks have various frequencies. That means that this tool could produce various musical notes, or tones, which could transmit speech. Murgas also used other tools, including an alternator, telegraph key, imperfect contact, interrupters, antenna, transformers, coils, and wires.
Because of the rapidity and smooth flow of the transmissions, the Murgas system was referred to as musical telegraphy. In 1903, after the invention of the Murgas system, the New York Herald claimed that the system could relay signals across 70 miles of land and more than 700 miles of water. Murgas noted that he would, on occasion, receive SOS signals and other messages from ships hundreds of miles at sea. With the invention of this new system, Murgas solved the problem of long-distance wireless transmission over land and became known worldwide. From the outside of Murgas's lab, his patrons could see the 50-foot tall pole with a wire leading into his lab used to transmit his radio signals. Murgas was a perfectionist and continually sought to improve his system. He was known to spend days at a time locked away in his lab, working hard on new devices and improving the old ones. Murgas is known to have skipped meals and sleep in order to complete his experiments. And despite having only cheap building materials and constantly being low on funds, he was addicted to innovation, creating invention after invention. Many of these inventions were created, patented, and then sold to the Navy, so Murgas had money, though limited, to improve his wireless telegraphy system. In 1904, Murgas begrudgingly accepted an offer from the Universal Aether Telegraph Company. With his contract, he was provided with a new lab and money for his experiments, but his patents became the property of the electrical company, and the money he received was dependent on the success of his work. In 1905, he had two 200-foot twin wooden antenna towers built. One was in Wilkes-Barre, and the other was roughly 20 miles away in Scranton. These towers were the first of their kind in the United States.
The first big test of this new invention was on April 27, 1905, between Wilkes-Barre and Scranton. The messages that were sent said, "Success to the inventor," and "Gloria in el Chelsea's Deo." History was made because those were the first time messages were sent and received over land at such a long distance. The official test with the public gathered at the site on November 23, 1905. People congregated to see the most advanced wireless telegraph in the world, and it was happening in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. About 45 to 50 words per minute could be sent using this technology. This demonstration was so important because it firmly established Father Murgas's claim to the development of the first practical land radio. Additionally, this demonstration had a significant cultural impact. The messages that were sent between Wilkes-Barre and Scranton were in English, Latin, Slovak, and Polish, which was the very first time that these four languages were used for communication through the air. One of Father Murgas's biographers, Jozef also said that this demonstration showed that people from all walks of life, all national backgrounds, and all religions could get together to appreciate something of value, leaving all prejudices and sectional differences aside. It showed the enduring value of study, hard work, and following through with one's ideas, and the completion of tasks once started.
Another successful demonstration was performed for President Theodore Roosevelt on August 10, 1905. It was soon after this momentous event that Marconi met with Murgas. Murgas was extremely passionate about his work, and it is speculated that he shared some of his trade secrets with other inventors. His passion was very evident on November 23, 1905, when Murgas conducted his first public demonstration, which was once again a success. Murgas then applied the discoveries that he made in wireless telegraphy to a radio invention. Unfortunately, 2 months after the private radio test, a terrible storm severely damaged the twin antenna towers in both cities. At the same time, the radio scene was exploding with inventors like Marconi, and the competition was stiff. With their towers down, Murgas and the Universal Aether Telegraph Company did not receive any of the naval contracts they had hoped for, and funding began to dwindle. Yet, from his invention and the works of other various inventors, we have the radio of today. Murgas was a man of so many talents and interests, each of which he threw himself into determinedly. He accomplished a great deal in his life, despite having to move across the world and worked with limited capital. Father Murgas started out as just a boy from a small town in Slovakia, but for those who knew his story, he is considered the inventor who revolutionized wireless communication.
The radio has had an enormous impact on history, including assisting in the fall of communism in Central Eastern Europe at the end of the 20th century, because it was a source of free information for citizens. While in Prague, we visited Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty that currently broadcasts news to 23 countries. The radio is instrumental in getting information to citizens who live under governments who censor information. The radio has always been a part of my life, and it is fascinating to know that it was invented in my home community. Murgas's discoveries have had a huge impact on how we communicate and obtain information. I am grateful to Father Murgas, and I admire his dedication and hard work. He has made a difference in the lives of people from many generations throughout the world. Many years from now, I hope I can tell my future children and grandchildren about how I studied Father Murgas and how he has impacted our lives.
He was one of the best students. He studied painting with the Professor Herterich and then painting with Professor Höcker.
Dokladom toho, že bol naozaj aj výborným študentom a jeho práce mali veľmi vysokú hodnotu, je, že dostal také akoby vyznamenanie a na výstave mu vystavovali aj práce z tej kresby, aj práce z malby. To sa dovtedy nikdy nestalo.
So as a sign of his exceptional skills, he was kind of awarded, or he earned some kind of merit because his student works were exhibited in an exhibition, not only his drawing but also his paintings, and it was very unique because it was not custom that students' works were exhibited.
My name is Marissa Spatafor, and this is Father Murgas, the painter. In the summer of 2016, together with a group of King's faculty and students, I traveled to Central Eastern Europe for a study abroad program. A central theme for this trip was to further understand the rich cultures and complicated history of Eastern Europe that are often far overshadowed by their Western counterparts. In particular, we looked at themes of Eastern Europe identity, place, and discovery. At the heart of these themes was the life and achievements of Father Jozef Murgas. Father Murgas was a Renaissance man of his own time, an inventor, a biologist, an artist, a priest, a nationalist, and a visionary. Coming from humble beginnings, he reflects the love and loyalty one can have for their heritage and their roots. He never stopped serving his community, which was first and foremost the Slovak people. Father Murgas truly embodies the themes we had set out to explore. By learning about his life, work, and art, we are better able to understand and comprehend the culture and identity of the Slovak people. Some would say art is a window into one's life and one's thoughts. It can be a reflection of how they see the world. It can also be a reflection of what one holds dear, a glimpse into the things that they carry in their hearts. By looking at Father Murgas's paintings, one can see how much he cherished his nationality, his countrymen, and also his dedication and love for God. Father Murgas was born in 1864 in the small village of Tahoe, in the heart of nowadays Slovakia, to poor peasant parents Jozef and Mary Murgas. At the time, Slovakia was under the control of Hungary. Despite being under foreign control, the Slovak people retained their Slovak identity and language. The Slovak language was codified at the beginning of the 19th century during a period of Slovak national revival. However, in response to this expression of Slovak identity and resistance to their foreign rule, the Slovak people were extremely suppressed and at the time were forced to assimilate to Hungarian culture. Murgas's parents, not having much to offer Jozef, did what they could to make sure he received opportunities in life through educational advancement. Murgas entered the gymnasium in the city of Bankošovce by Styria, where his interests and talents in fine art were first discovered. He studied at the school until 1882, at which point he left to pursue priesthood at the Catholic seminary in Bratislava. However, during his time at the school, it has been said that drawing and painting held a fascination for him and made him happy. So even while advancing his studies in ministry, he continued to further his pursuit of the arts. In 1884, he moved to Ostrom, where he studied seminary and art. It is here that a superior recognized his talents as an artist and gave one of his paintings to a local bishop. The bishop liked the painting so much that he sent Murgas to study at the Academy of Arts in München. It was there that he earned his high rank as an art student. Following his ordination as a priest, Father Murgas continued to paint. During this time, he grew as an artist, and his talents were also starting to become recognized due to the many drawings and paintings he gave to the local churches. One such painting, The Christ Before Pilate, given to his local bishop, resulted in him being sent by the bishop to further study landscapes and portraits in Budapest. Then once again, he returned to the Academy of Arts in München, where his talents continued to flourish. He became the first known student to receive a certificate for painting and drawing in his first year. Murgas stayed at the Academy for 4 years and received several awards and honors from his work during that time. Upon returning from his studies in München, Murgas continued his pastoral work in Slovakia while still painting. Soon his reputation as an artist began to build as his paintings continued to adorn many churches throughout the country. He was recognized as a promising artist in the Kingdom of Hungary, a feat that was hard to accomplish in such a time since Hungary rulers were reluctant to give credit to any Slovak. This recognition of Father Murgas' artistic talents led to the events that ultimately caused his immigration to the United States. According to Murgas' biography, Stephen Pelak, a request came from the Hungarian government for Father Murgas to critique a recently completed painting by a famous Hungarian painter, Mila Munkaski, that was to be hung in the Parliament building in Budapest. Father Murgas reluctantly accepted the invitation because of the persistence of his former art teacher and bishop. The painting, titled Honfoglas, which means occupation of country, depicts a scene of the 907 Battle of Bratislava, when Slovak land was first conquered by the Hungarians. It was a battle that the Slovaks did not lose quietly, yet the scene showed the Hungarians as strong soldiers with beautiful uniforms and mighty white horses. In contrast, the Slovaks were depicted as cowering, close to the ground, filled with fear and submitting to those great conquerors. In Father Murgas' proud Slovak eyes, the painting was a blatant lie. It did not depict the battle the Slovaks had known. Father Murgas would not stand to withhold his feelings even surrounded by powerful Hungarian people and nobility. It is said that upon approaching the painting, he took a few steps back, squared up his shoulders, and proclaimed among the lion's den of Hungarian diplomats, "This painting represents a pathetic fallacy of history." Murgas then further criticized the painting's title and its historical portrayal of his people. It is this event that exemplifies the strong Slovak identity that Father Murgas and the Slovak people felt under foreign oppression. Despite the courage Father Murgas had shown in standing up for the Slovak people, the consequences of such an action soon changed the course of his life forever. Father Murgas, very soon after proclaiming his opinion of the Hungarian painting, began to experience major obstacles in his ability to further study science, art, and religion. The protection, guidance, and support he had previously received from the bishop was nowhere to be found, as the new bishop assumed his duties and looked unfavorably on Father Murgas. Fortunately, he soon came in contact with a fellow Slovak priest in America, Father Matthew Jankola. who worked with the Slovak community in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Upon hearing of Father Murgas's predicament, he suggested he come to the United States to be able to do more as a priest here than under Hungarian oppression. On April 6, 1896, Father Murgas arrived in America and was temporarily assigned to the parish in Pittston, Pennsylvania, alongside Father Jankola. A few short months after that, he was put in charge of the Sacred Heart Catholic Slovak Church in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Over the years that followed, he used his artistic talents to help erect many buildings and improve the church. While his work certainly took up much of his time, he still made time for his art. A lot of the beautifications of the church were contributed by Father Murgas, whose paintings adorned the church walls. His first painting he completed in America was a stunning reproduction of the Immaculate Conception. Murgas had admired the original so much that he decided to reproduce the painting so that it could be placed in the main altar. Murgas's second painting was the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which was placed inside the altar of the church. Ultimately, his most meaningful artistic work that he contributed to the church was a mural he painted on the dining room walls in his rectory. The scene depicted Tahoe, the village he had grown up in. Parishioners were moved by the personal element it conveyed that told the observer such a mural was the work of a Slovak. Many were delighted to marvel at the ever-familiar aspects of their native home in Slovakia, and the way it conveyed such true Slovakian life. Even miles and miles from their homeland, Father Murgas and his parishioners still held love and unbound pride for their Slovak heritage and identity. Murgas continued painting while in America and even used his paintings to help raise funds for his church, his research on telegraphy, and also to support his beloved parishioners. The last painting Father Murgas created was titled A Priest's Portrayal of His Bishop. The painting was done in 1925. The subject was his immediate superior, the late Bishop O'Reilly of Scranton. The same year, Father Murgas passed away as a beloved leader of his congregation and a truly accomplished artist. Father Murgas's life is the exemplification of Slovak identity. Through his art, Father Murgas helped promote the culture and national pride of the Slovak people, not just in his home country, but also in America. Jozef Murgas was a pioneer who used his art to unite the Slovaks of America and bring them closer to God.
Inventor, artist, scientist, sportsman, leader, and statesman. An outstanding American citizen. These titles, among many, including that of an outstanding parish priest, given to Reverend Joseph Murgas, whose name and life work is honored throughout Pennsylvania on November 12th. Pennsylvania Governor Edward Martin made the following declaration.
In a life devoted to his church and to the betterment of others, Joseph Murgas gave much to his fellow man. He held many patents in the field of wireless communication and is largely responsible for the development of the transmission of voices by radio. His deep interest in world democracy was most exemplified when, under his successful leadership, the $1 Million Drive provided funds which helped to establish the new Czechoslovakian Republic in 1918. A leader and an even more creative force for the betterment of man, his life was so filled with outstanding examples of accomplishment, of work for his friend, his neighbor, his fellowmen in every walk of life, as to set his memory deep in their minds. Pennsylvania is so proud to honor Joseph Murgas.
Father Murgas, Priest, by Jordan O'Leary. To say that I grew up in a religious family is putting it mildly. One of my first memories is that of my grandpa picking me up early Sunday morning with breakfast, waiting in the car and taking me to Sunday school. I attended a private parochial school where my parents served on the school's board of governors, helping to oversee the curriculum and teachers that I had. This continued on with my high school education at Scranton Prep, where even though religious classes were mandatory, their goal for us, if we took nothing else away from our education, was to put others first and to have the servant-like attitude of Christ. This is part of what helped in my decision in attending King's. Now, many people may be asking why on earth a 21-year-old college student would want to learn about a dead Slovak priest who most people never heard of that just so happened to live and minister to a small town within a half-hour's drive of where she grew up. Trust me, I was a tad skeptical when I had learned that he was the reason why we would be going to Slovakia. However, after I started reading some of the materials about Father Murgas, I was amazed to learn what a talented Renaissance man he was. Yet his faith was always in the forefront. In all aspects of his life, the light of Christ was evident. Having grown up in a household where my faith and religion played an important part in my education and upbringing, and the resemblance to one of the role models, I was interested in learning more about Father Murgas, who shared a similar upbringing and whose faith was the driving force behind every action. Before Father Murgas was even born, it seems he was almost destined for a religious upbringing. His parents, who had trouble conceiving children, prayed continually for a child, and when Father Murgas was born, his father erected a wooden cross in the small Slovak village of Tahoe, which still stands to this day. His mother, much like mine, understood the need for a good education and enrolled him in the gymnasium in Banca Bystrica and took him to church with her. Although his initial interests were in the arts and sciences, he saw that further education and experimentation in these fields were only obtainable by entering the priesthood, which was highly encouraged by his parents. Therefore, in 1882, he entered the seminary in Bratislava and in 1884 the seminary in Ostrom to pursue priesthood. Jozef Murgas only took advanced theology classes, physics, and astronomy, but he also aimed to learn French and German and set up an art studio. On November 10, 1888, he was ordained to the priesthood in the Diocese of Banca Bystrica. Throughout the next few years, Father Murgas dedicated himself to carrying out his priestly duties by serving in churches. Even his artwork and pursuit of the sciences were built on his faith. He painted biblical scenes such as Christ before Pilate, many of which Father Murgas gave to bishops and local churches, and he started a butterfly collection due to his belief that God is not only the author of life, of force, of beauty, and the glory of the universe, but also of growth and progress of nature of all around him. Much like Jesus speaking out against the persecution of the social misfits of Jewish society, like the tax collectors and poor, Father Murgas was very outspoken against the Hungarian monarchy's abuse of his fellow Slovaks. During this time, Father Murgas became friends with the fellow Slovak priest Matthew John Jankola, who was ministering to the Catholic Slovaks immigrants in Pennsylvania. Upon learning of his trials in Slovakia, Father Jankola invited Father Murgas to join him in Wilkes-Barre. Seeing this offer as an intervention of divine providence, Father Murgas joined Father Jankola in his Pittston parish, and soon after, in 1896, as the pastor of the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Wilkes-Barre, where he served for the rest of his life. Filled with a new light and energy, Father Murgas decided to advance his parish, and within his first 6 months there, he oversaw the completion of a new church building in 1896 and procured a cemetery for the church. Not wanting to only feed the spiritual needs of his congregation, Father Murgas founded numerous other organizations for them to seek financial aid, to hold town meetings, and to be educated. Seeing the importance of a well-rounded education is not just the fundamentals of their religion, but also in the national, social, economic, and civic sphere, he also oversaw the construction of parochial school in 1897, where the Slovak nuns from the Order of St. Cyril Methodius assumed teaching responsibilities in 1909. Father Murgas also helps the parish to sustain its financial viability by reducing its staff from $17,000 to only $800 by 1899. Due to concerns for his parishioners and their salvation, he helped establish the Slovak Catholic Federation of America, which soon became the largest Catholic Slovak religious organization in America. He wrote the Catechetical Encyclopedia and Divine Roses, both of which were used to educate Slovak children, established St. Anthony's Treasure Chest, which helped cover the expenses of educating Slovak girls who wanted to become nuns, and organized the annual Slovak Day, which the Bishop of Scranton attended and praised the contributions of the Slovak people to the Catholic Church in America. In 1906, Father Murgas realized the need for a larger church, and he put to use his artistic background to have it modeled after the most beautiful Gothic churches in Central Europe. In addition to the impressive size of the church and important stained glass windows, Father Murgas put to use his God-given artistic talent and personally painted the artwork above the altars, brought one of the largest stained glass windows as a gift, and contributed $5,000 towards the construction and landscaping costs by selling his paintings. Education was so important to him that he even set out to build a larger school in 1925 and incorporated the most modern technologies of that time, which led to it ranking as one of the best schools in Pennsylvania. Father Murgas was deeply devoted to his parishioners, and they appreciated and loved him for it. They honored him on his Silver Jubilee celebration, his 25th anniversary of his ordination on November 10, 1913, and later in 1928 celebrated the 40th anniversary of his priesthood and his 33rd year in their church. Although Father Murgas appreciated these honors for his hard work, he worked hard not for the praise of man, but rather to win favor from God. For him, the true reward would be hearing, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Even on the day of his death, May 11, 1929, when he was not feeling well, he performed a holy mass To the very end, Father Murgas was a priest dedicated to his God and parishioners. He was an inspiration for people and was able to show that science and religion do not have to be separate spheres, but rather they help contribute to the appreciation of each other.
Murgas is also known as a biologist, so he also planted or was into some flowers. For example, he ordered tulips from, for example, the Netherlands or Japan. And he had small garden next to his house.
Bol aj veľmi významný a známy entomológ, čiže toto sú dva z jeho zbierky, dve vlastne tie krabičky, motýle a hníz zbieral, tá jeho zbierka počítala 9,000 kusov.
He also collected butterflies and insects, and it is known that his collection contained approximately 9,000 animals.
Father Murgas, Biologist, by Marissa Duraco. It wasn't until the spring of 2016 that I first heard the name Father Jozef Murgas. This is surprising when you learn about his many talents and geniuses. Not only was he a priest, but he was also an artist, radio inventor, biologist, and nationalist. Better yet, although he was originally born in Tahov, Slovakia, Father Murgas was made famous right here in Wilkes-Barre. There is currently a room dedicated to him and his contributions in the Kings on the Square building. Fortunately, I was able to take a walk down to the square and check out this room of dedication to him. The room includes examples of all his attributes. There were copies of his paintings, display cases of many different butterflies and moths that he had collected, and models of some of his radio inventions. Visiting this room really gave me more of an idea of the man who I had been reading and learning about in the few months leading up to my trip to Slovakia. Although his paintings were incredible and his radio inventions made a huge impact in today's society, I was most impressed with his collection of butterflies and moths. Who knew that a priest would be interested in biology in general, let alone butterfly collecting? Murgas, like myself, had a great love of nature and the outdoors. He recognized how plants, animals, the atmosphere all play their part and find a way to adapt and live among each other. Although it's easy to get caught up within our busy daily lives and forget about what is happening right outside our windows, when we get a chance to take a step back and recognize the beauty and serenity, it truly is incredible. Father Murgas was always interested in butterfly collecting since he was a small boy, but he never really made it a hobby of his until in his later years. He originally started his collection in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where, in the end, he possessed over 9,000 different specimens of butterflies and moths. His collection consisted of some of the rarest types of butterflies and moths. After collecting the insects, he would then identify, carefully classify, catalog, and finally mount the insects in Riker frames, which are glass front hardwood display cases, perfect for displaying insects. Father Murgas was very passionate about his collection, and he wouldn't stop until he had every specimen that he can possibly find. Occasionally, Murgas purchased insects from other avid collectors in order to increase or complete his collection. He would have some of the children from the town go out and try and collect butterflies and moths for him as well. However, although Murgas appreciated the help from the children, he most enjoyed those moments when he could go out into the nature himself and catch the butterflies and moths. This was a very arduous and painstaking hobby. It was very hard to collect and capture the insects in their natural habitat. Father Murgas had a great deal of patience and a lot of persistence, which enabled him to become the great collector that he was. During his later years, Father Murgas became weak. He was no longer able to properly sustain the upkeep of his collections. Therefore, he graciously donated his entire collection to the parochial school in which he was in charge of. He wanted to encourage the study of this neglected field of nature. The collection remained for some years at the parochial school, where the children enjoyed observing the various butterflies and moths. Each specimen was unique and had its own personality. Some were big, others were small, some colorful, others more plain. Either way, the children could admire and study the collection. Eventually, however, the small and inauspicious room where the collection was displayed became ignored and less important. Dozens of Riker frames and glass encasements were broken, and many specimens were taken away by the school children. After some careful thought, Monsignor Svoboda decided to present Father Murgas's Lepidoptera collection to King's College of Wilkes-Barre, where it would become part of their biology department. According to Father Murgash's biographer, Stephen Palikar, the donation contained about 6,000 different specimens and included every species found in the eastern region of Pennsylvania. The college graciously accepted the collection. Today, it is officially known as the Father Jozef Murgas Memorial Collection, donated by Monsignor John S. Sobota on behalf of the Blessed Virgin Sodality of Sacred Heart Parish. Along with collecting and identifying butterflies, Father Murgas took an interest in fishing. He became a scientific piscatorian, an avid fisherman who knew all about different fish and how to catch them. He often took rides to areas such as Harvey's Lake, Lake Silkworth, or the Pocono Mountains to catch fish, including carp, sucker, calico, and bass. He enjoyed studying several aspects of fish, such as their ability to change color in order to match their surroundings, or how fish communicate with one another using fish language. Remarkably, Murgas, valuing the importance of a well-designed fishing pole with the highest level of efficiency, invented a reel and tackle of his own. His invention possessed a non-backlash or non-kickback device. It is still used today and has been an integral part in advancing the success and enjoyment of the sport. Father Murgas was a very talented and hardworking man. He used his gifts wisely and contributed to society in so many ways. He wanted to utilize his knowledge and talents in order to help make the world a more prosperous and transcendent, divine place. I am very happy that I had the opportunity to learn about such a clever and intelligent man. Now, if someone mentions Father Jozef Murgas, I will instantly recognize the name and will be able to inform them of his many talents and achievements.
A vlastne aj tú oblasť, kde to hlavne teda bolo vidieť v tom potoku, nazvali Farebnuo a myslím, že tam je aj ten rodný dom Jozefa Murgaša.
And a part of this village that was called Farebnuo or colorful in English is there the house where Jozef Murgas was born.
Father Murgas, Slovak Nationalist by William Hearn and Charlotte Jelnowski. Growing up, I always knew of my Slovak heritage and that my Slovak great-grandparents were miners in the Wilkes-Barre area, but I never knew about one Slovak priest in particular who proudly led the Slovaks of the area. His name was Father Jozef Murgas. As I learned on a recent study abroad program in Slovakia, Father Murgas was a Slovak Catholic priest who not only brought together the Pennsylvania Slovak community, but changed the world as we know it. Along with his work as a priest, he was also an influential scientist, artist, and one of the loudest voices for the creation of an independent Slovak and later Czechoslovak state.
Murgas was born in Tahoe, Slovakia on February 17, 1864. He studied theology in Bratislava and Esztergom, graduated from Bankster Bystrica, and was ordained as a priest in 1888. Father Murgas was interested in painting and electrotechnology. He studied art in Budapest and Munich. Father Murgas enjoyed painting sacred pieces and Slovak landscapes and portraits. He often boasted about his homeland because he loved Slovakia so much.
As Father Murgas completed his schooling, he became more like an art superstar. According to his biographer, Stephen Palikar, Father Murgas was invited to give his opinion on a Hungarian painting by a famous Hungarian painter, Miele Monkasi. The painting portrayed the Battle of Bratislava of 1907 when Slovak lands were first conquered by the Hungarians. The painting showed the Slovaks like a weaker race of people, and Father Murgas saw it as historically inaccurate. The criticism of the Hungarian painting in defense of the Slovak identity was one of Murgas's first steps in fighting for Slovak pride and nationalism. Since many of his peers and critics were Hungarian or supported Hungary, Murgas came into conflict with them. The criticism was not only restricted to his art career, but it was also aimed at his duties as a priest. The result was Father Murgas moving to America to escape the persecution and to continue with his role as a priest at the Sacred Heart Church.
Father Murgas's main concern in Wilkes-Barre were the local Slovaks. He cared for the Slovak immigrants by building a new church, library, cemetery, and several schools, playgrounds, and a gymnasium, all of which were used by the community of American Slovaks. Father Murgas is also one of the founders of the St. Cyril and Methodius community, through which he cared for the children and youth of the town. He was very popular with Slovak Catholics because of the spiritual relationship that they had shared. Father Murgas published a newspaper where he issued some popular science articles and published Bible verses. He was active in the Slovak expatriates movement, wrote articles for the press about the Slovak identity, and became one of the founders of the Slovak League in America. Father Murgas later supported the creation of the independent country of Czechoslovakia. and organized a fund that raised $1 million for the cause. He contributed to the writing of the Pittsburgh Agreement in 1918 that led to the creation of Czechoslovakia, and was one of the signatories of the document. He gained support from some authorities in America for the establishment of Czechoslovakia.
Father Murgas later propelled the Slovak lead onto the international stage after reports that a group of Slovak parishioners were murdered because they would not let Hungarians dedicate a new church built in Eastern Europe. 7 years later, World War I officially started. To help buffer the damages caused by the fighting and displacement of innocent people, Murgas helped create the Slovak National Council of America and was the president of the organization. This group raised $150,000, which was a significant amount of money at the time. In 1915, Murgas organized a $1 million drive to raise money to create a new country with the Czech people, eventually named Czechoslovakia. At the time, this was very controversial since the Czechs were viewed by some Slovaks as having bullied the Slovaks, just as the Hungarians did. However, many others, including Murgas, were in support of a union to secure the freedom of both the Czechs and Slovaks. With Murgas's help, supporters of the creation of a union were able to reach their monetary goal. Father Murgas gave the money to Thomas Masaryk, future president of the newly established state. The creation of Czechoslovakia was definitely a significant point of Murgas's Slovak building efforts. As Czechoslovakia became more settled, Father Murgas decided to take a trip over to the new country to meet with President Masaryk and possibly discuss a role for Murgas in the government. When he arrived in Czechoslovakia, it is reported that Murgas was refused a meeting with the president or the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Edward Beans. Recent scholarship suggests that perhaps in the end, a meeting did take place. At this point, the research is unclear. Afterward, Father Murgas was offered a position as bishop in the Czechoslovak National Church, which was created with the purpose of rivaling the Catholic Church. This came as an enormous insult towards Murgas, and he quickly turned down the offer. While he felt disrespected by his old Czech allies, Murgas still supported them to the end of his life. Many of his critics accused him of a divided loyalty between being a true Slovak or a Czech. In his eyes, he would always be loyal to the Slovak people, and he was going to do everything in his power to help secure the Slovaks in Eastern Europe and America, and to help them prosper.
In 1925, at 65 years of age, Father Murgas was nominated to be a member of the Federal Radio Commission of the United States. Murgas died 4 years later due to a heart attack on May 11, 1929 in Wilkes-Barre and is buried in Dallas, PA. Today, in Tahoe, Slovakia, Murgas's hometown, there is a memorial room and a museum dedicated to his life and a symbolic grave alongside his parents at the cemetery. A retired teacher by the name of Jozef takes care of the memorial room and the grave. At King's College in Wilkes-Barre, PA, there is a memorial room that displays his artwork, portions of his butterfly collection, mementos from his radio inventions, his priestly vestments, and his commitment to Slovaks and the Slovak nation.
Joseph Weber wrote the biography Little Journals to the homes of great scientists about Joseph Murgas.
One of the contributions, of course, of Joseph Murgas was he really invented practical land wireless for sending wireless telegraphy, and towards the end of his period when he was working on these things, he actually sent voice messages. He held the patent on practical wireless from 1904, and the other people that were involved in wireless just thought it would be useful on the sea. He saw that the tremendous use of it, like we use today, of radio, but not only radio, he was also the first one to do any kind of social networking. He communicated across the Susquehanna River with a fellow priest, and they would talk about social things. It's something that really had not been done before. There were just coded telegraphic messages between ships about things that they needed to know in the shipping lanes. You have to keep in mind that it was much easier to send signals across water where there were no obstructions. Joseph Murgas thought that this was a challenge to come up with a method of sending these signals across land where there were obstructions. So he was able to send signals between Wilkes-Barre and Scranton very easily. He demonstrated this in 1905, and there were 100 people that that witnessed this.
Joseph Weber believes the reemergence of Father Murgas began with an essay contest, and recognition of his achievements is bound to increase when a museum opens in New York State.
All of the wards connected with his life and his knowledge of him and his contribution to radio were very well known in the 20s and 30s, and only died out later to be revived when two boys entered an essay contest in about 1989, and all of a sudden the Antique Wireless Association took note of this contest, and they started promoting the efforts of Murgas. And I'm a longtime member of the Antique Wireless Association, and I follow carefully what they do, and hopefully in our new museum up in New York State, we have a museum up around Rochester. We're going to have a lot to say about Jozef Murgas and the part that he played in this infant industry that he was part of. This is a man who he was one of the greatest Slovak scientists and one of the greatest American scientists. I mean, he had the nucleus of social networking as well as of radio, and by just moving over a little bit television, because half of television is radio. These things were all due to his efforts, and they happened right here in Wilkes-Barre.
This documentary featured King students who took part in the study abroad trip to learn more about Father Jozef Murgas. They wrote the reflections featured in the piece. The students are Jordan O'Leary, William Hearn, Charlotte Yelnowski, Marissa Duraco, Marissa Spatafor, Caroline Jones, and Bryn Connor. Special thanks to Renata Yvonne and Beth Admiral of King's College. Production work on this project was completed at WRKC Radio King's College by Lauren Gallagher, Dan Stokes, and Sue Henry.